Broadway. This is a live edition of the Jake Feinberg Show, coming to you live on Power Talk. Please go to our website, powertalk.live. Download our free app and stream all of our live local programming, including Solomon on Blast, the Jim Parisi Show, and yours truly, the Jake Feinberg Show. And we can't thank you enough for making us part of your day today. And one of the reasons I continue to do this program is to enlighten people that have only been on the earth for a certain period of time, millennials, Gen Xers, Gen Ys, people that have not been around that long, have seen a saturation of information on all sorts of news outlets, in YouTube, that quite honestly, it's hard to make up your mind or even know what the truth is. But there were peeps on this earth who have been around for quite some time and a lot longer than we have. And we are blessed to be joined again by a poet, a theologian, and a Vietnam veteran, a guy who has really done it all, one of the original Merry Pranksters, Ken Babbs. Welcome back to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Hi, Jake. Good to be here. And remember, ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall set thee free.
That is right, except if you're dealing with alternative streams of reality. And well,
yeah, when you're high, everything is true.
Well, no, that's the for lack of a better word, that's an erogenous zone. But is there any parallel between what we're seeing now in our three branches of government versus Nixon?
Well, in a way, yeah. I mean, they're both Republicans, and Nixon was proven to be kind of a rascal, and who knows what will happen with this. But in other words, we've moved on from that to a new scene, and it's very interesting and very, what you might say, provocative, and also filling everybody's heads and talk with what's going on. And the real problem is not to get too involved with it when it doesn't really touch you, but to be aware of what's going on, and when you're around a scene where somebody's being harassed or being treated unfairly, that you speak out and you continue to protect the rights of people around you and the people that you see every day in your own life, and not get involved so much in the dialogue.
No, I think it's important, and you brought this up last time about the idea that you always refer to your brother, your big brother, or your best brother, Ken Kesey, about how he treated everybody the same, and most importantly, left people feeling better than before he came. But could you give an example in your life? It doesn't have to be in modern times, really. It could be going back, but when you did advocate for somebody or a peoples that were being harassed or treated unfairly?
Well, that's a good question. As you're going through town and you see the people that are homeless and ones that are kind of out there mentally and screaming and yelling stuff, and I have been between people who get in arguments like that, and have one of the prankster gimmicks or tricks was to say something off the wall or doing something off the wall that breaks the train that's plummeting toward one another in a big crash, and turns it off on a side rail, like the time at the Vietnam Day rally when in Berkeley when peaceniks and the what would you call them, provocateurs from the FBI and the CIA were going at it and trying to get something started so the cops could come in and bust heads. And we walked through the middle of them, and I was getting out some Dentine gum, and I said, "Dentine, anybody care for some Dentine gum? Dentine gum? Have some gum." And it threw them so badly that they just kind of muttered and wandered off in their own directions.
You make it. I mean, that's how my mom actually picked up my dad, by offering him gum. But did you? Is it really?
What kind?
I think it might have been. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think it was Dentine. But the thing is, you said this thing that actually almost brought me to tears, and I transcribed it yesterday. And I'm going to read it to you right now. You said the crux of the matter. This was going back. I think we did our second interview before the presidential election. You said the crux of the matter in America today is that the rich get richer and the upper middle class get richer, and the others start to sink lower and lower. And from that cesspool has to arise something that we don't even know what it is. We're hoping it will be something wonderful and not something awful. Something's got to happen because it can't go on like this unless we're content having a lot of rich people and a lot of poor people and a lot of destitute people. Our job as individuals is when we're in those scenes is that we treat every one of those people like a real person and not a throwaway person, which is the way a lot of the world sees them. And then you give Katrina as an example, referring to these people as throwaway people. And I'm going to go back to you specifically instead of getting wrapped up in the hyperbole and the dialogue and the hyper-reactive freaks that are, that are trying to position themselves politically. I want to talk about a Babbsian moment of really extending a hand to another brother or sister who was a throwaway person, and you made them, it was just in a public setting, and you did exactly what you were talking about here, because it is really what the crux of everything. And you said this before the election. We now know what it is. So riff on that.
We know what?
You said from this cesspool has to arise something that we don't.
Well, I got that, but the thing, what it is.
Well, no, what it is. We know what it is. We know what it is now. It is Trump.
Oh, that's the it you're talking about.
Yeah, that's the it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So what's the question again?
The question is you talk about our job as individuals is when you see these scenes, is that you treat everybody like a real person. I know I struggle with it. I think everybody struggles with it. Can you personalize it, even if it's in Eugene? Some example of when you treated somebody who, quote unquote, is seen by a lot of people as a throwaway person, and you treated him like a real person.
Well, that happens to me all the time. Going to the library, there was a man that was in a wheelchair, and he was also blind. And, he had a cup out in front of him, and people just passed by him, didn't pay attention to him, so I stopped and talked to him and wanted to know, how he was doing, and found out he was a veteran, and, that he was getting by as good as he could and everything, and just talked to him for like 5 or 10 minutes, and gave him a few bucks and treated him like a real person. I'll tell you, one of the most meaningful things that ever happened to me. I was in Seattle with my son and grandson. My grandson was going to it still is going to Washington, and we were walking down, and I happened to look on the corner there, and up on the steps, there were some steps there, was a Marine, obviously in his total Marine sharp outfit, with the chevrons on his shoulder. And I looked at him, and I went up and talked to him and introduced myself, and he said, Sergeant so-and-so, and I said, well, I was Captain Babbs in the Marine Corps, and boy, he just took to me right away. And he was a sergeant major, which is as high as you can get in the enlisted ranks. And I looked at him, he had his bag there at his feet, and he was so sharp, and I said, what's going on? What's happened here? And he says, the same thing that's happened to a lot of veterans, he says, and he went into this whole rap about the VA and not being taken care of and everything. And I realized there was more going on there than he was letting on, that something happened to him to put him in this position. And but he was so happy that I would talk to him like this and be concerned about him and everything, and even accepted the $10 bill I gave him. Even though, it was two men sharing something there together. And I walked away, and I was really moved by that.
Can you go back? This is one thing I wanted to talk about. I'm not going to ask you to riff off the top of your head, but, you got into the writing program at Stanford University when you first met Kesey. And, was your writing always... Did you have some poems that focused on humanity? This has been something that you've been cultivating for a long time. Is there stuff that you... No,
it's evolved over the years. Most of my writing is strictly imaginative, inventive fiction stuff. that I do. And now, well, since I did my Vietnam book, I try to frame my fictional, made-up stuff within a real setting and with real people. I mean, not people that I name or anything like that, but people that you can believe in as ordinary people in that. And within that have things happen of a creative, inventive nature, going out there, because this is our tradition, as acid heads, is we go places where others haven't been, and some have been, and because you realize it's wide open out there, and it's wide open in here, and it's wide open right here on the earth, and so we get to choose and pick, what we're going to go with. And as I say to everybody, I don't care what your situation is, how bad it is or what, you got to find that spot where you can groove. You got to enjoy life. You're only here once. You don't get another go-round, It's no do-overs. You fuck up, well, so what? Everybody does. I mean, we're all, mortal, flawed beings, human beings. That's what it's all about, being here on the planet and in the material world, is going through life and screwing up, but still striving, and every time you fall, getting up and going farther. And as Kesey says, went through life a balanced man at last.
Talking to Ken Babbs here on the Jake Feinberg Show, live on Power Talk. I mean, you're quoted as saying that LSD breaks down conformist ideology, and I look at it now. I mean, you are going into your 79th year. Is that accurate? How is that?
No, I'm 81
You're
now.
81 now. Okay, so you're 81 years old. Congratulations on that. And no, I'm serious, because we're all going to get there, hopefully. And
yes, oh yeah, with today's world, God, we can go into the hundreds now and still be active and
very
and fit.
But when you go back to, what are your memories? My interpretation, not being around, was that the LSD broke down, even if enough people weren't even aware that they were experimenting with it, when it was legal, when it was on the periphery, even when it became illegal, that a lot of cats that came from very straight ahead households, that there was a very linear way of thinking, it was very myopic. Ultimately, it broke down their conformist ideology, because I'm seeing the same thing today. I wonder if you go back to the time of McCarthyism of the late 50s, where did you come up with this idea of breaking down the conformist ideology? What does that mean exactly? Because I've been trying to articulate it on my program in the sense of saying, boy, peeps, if more people did some microdosing, we could actually have a lot more harmony, because people would be, a lot of their psyche would be broken down. And you kind of already riffed on that, I mean, when this is what I was reading here.
Well, I don't think we're breaking down these conformist things. I'm just saying that you see an opening, or there's an opening that goes where you see other stuff happening besides the conformist things. I mean, one of the things that made our lives successful, Kesey and me and the pranksters, when we were doing LSD, was the fact that all of us came from pretty good families, solid backgrounds, and everything. And so we said we had a real good launching pad to venture out into the outer reaches, and always had something we could come back to. And it gave us the strength, and we realized that we were astronauts of inner space, and had to be as fit and as prepared and as willing to go in places just like the actual astronauts that went out into space, and knowing also that there could be crashes and stuff happen that you don't expect, all of that. And this really is what gave us the what would you say, the ability to navigate, and to not only that, but to hallucinate, and not only that, but to perpetuate another view of things, that that the world and the universe and the people are all one unit that can be together if possible. But it's a long process. And who knows, maybe this is what living is all about, is that there are people who see and help others to see, and there are also others who are blind or misinformed, who will continue to, promote warfare and gluttony and all those other things that you learn you don't really go out to get involved with.
We have a game on this program called Name That Voice, Mr. Babbs. I'd like you to take a listen to this, and then we'll come back and talk about it, okay?
Sure.
I mean, Neil was an amazing driver. I want to tell you, he's amazing. This guy was just, talking and just, jabbering. He's coming on, he loved it.
No, I mean, I remember talking to. Yeah, go ahead. I mean, he was having 3 conversations at once and not even looking at the road. Somehow he wouldn't get in an accident. I don't know how that happened.
No, and he could all bring it back together.
Right.
He would have all these different things out there, and it was like juggling. It was amazing just to listen to him. It was a work of art. But anyway, he more like a Pollock, though, But anyway, he would just barely miss these cars, I mean, just inches, and we're freaking out. I think maybe he did hit a car. I mean, just one car that I can remember. But anyway, all of a sudden Jack says, "Stop!" And of course we're playing our music, in through the loudspeakers, kind of inside. I don't think, or piping it out. It was the middle of the night. Stop! And so Neil, jams on the brakes, and open the door. So he opens the door, and Jack jumps out, and it's just a street corner with this, one street lamp hanging down, and Jack, he's got his, sloppy suit coat on, kind of, and I think he had, a little hat of some sort, and he jumps out there and just starts doing this jig. I mean, it was just, that snapshot, it just burned into my mind for some reason. You know what I mean? It was just, one of those times.
All right, Mr. Babbs, what do you got for us?
Oh, that's a good one. That was terrific. I mean, that had to be somebody who was with those guys and anything, like Herbert Huncke or, I don't know, too early for Gregory Corso.
Okay, I'm just because I want to be clear. You weren't you on the cross country trip?
On the bus?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was not on the bus.
Okay, because that gentleman was Dale Kesey.
Dale
Kesey, Babbs. Okay, so I mean,
but what the hell? He's talking about Jack Kerouac there, or is he talking about Cassidy?
He was okay. So exactly. You're sharp, man. He was talking about Neil because Neil was like a mentor to him. Dale was the youngest of the bunch, and he really idolized him. But then he said that Kerouac was the one that in the middle of the night. He just had jam on the brakes. Cassidy slammed on the brakes, and then Kerouac got out and did some kind of jig on the street corner.
Well, that must have been something Neil told him because Kerouac was never on the bus.
Okay, so listen. To his credit, Dale hung with me, but he hasn't been at this stuff for quite a long time. Can you actually can you reframe that so we can get it historically accurate? Were you present for that jig?
No, that's a total new thing to me. That was wonderful. Well, Dale, yeah, he's a character. He's a fiddler, and so he always would do his fiddling jigs and stuff like that. So I could see him having Kerouac dancing. I like that. That's a good story.
Can you?
The beautiful thing about all this is, sure, that was true. Because it's all true now. It's all a myth. Everything that happened back there has been mythologized. And the beautiful thing about a myth is the myth consists of everything that everybody adds to it. Like all the people that said they were on the bus. Oh, yes, of course you were. Of course you were. Because as it grows, the myth grows and grows and grows. And then over 2,000-3,000 years, all the crap and the detritus and all that stuff sloughs off the mountain that has become the myth. And then there's just the hard rock story that exists, and somebody will write that, and that'll be it, like Homer's Iliad or the Odyssey.
It's up there with the Iliad and the Odyssey. No, aren't you? But I mean, Babbs, we're living in this time where facts don't matter. And I'm not saying you specifically, but I mean, how many people come up to you and say, I was on the bus, and you're like, sure you were. But I mean, people are already like, don't you want it to be factually accurate, or is it okay that it just completely blows into some myth?
Well, it's just the way it is, man. It's a myth, and people keep adding to the myth. What's the difference? I mean, it's like Timothy Leary said. He says, if you can remember what happened, then you weren't there.
Can you talk about Leary, because were you able to actually co-join the acid, the consciousness awakening of the West and the East Coast as much as you wanted to? Was Leary helpful in that endeavor?
The whole thing about there being some kind of schism between the East Coast and the West Coast, and between Leary and us, was something, I don't know where it came from, but entirely untrue, because they were doing their stuff there in a different way than we were doing our stuff. I mean, we were out in the world flamboyant, exploiting and enjoying and celebrating, but they were more meditative and going into the inner workings and all that stuff, because they were psychologists and professors, and those kind of people. But when we met them at IFIF on our bus trip, we got along real well, and we didn't really get to see Leary because he was hung up in the house with a cold or something. But when we left, he met with Kesey and me back where nobody else was, and we really talked it over and realized that we were doing the same thing. And Leary said yes, and we want to keep doing it. And Kesey and I both said yes, and we all shook on it. And from then on, every chance we had to get together with Tim and see him was always perfect. He was a guy that really went places where, unbelievable places, where he, with the underground or something underground, and who are the other guys, and went to jail, and they broke him out, and he went to, Europe, and then he met this woman here, and they were in love, and she turned him into the police, and then he went to jail and was in a federal pen, and they thought Leary was involved in all kinds of drug stuff and all that, and so they would take him and Joe and Joanne in the car, these two agents, and drive around San Francisco, hoping that Leary would point out places where all this drug stuff was going on.
This drug stuff. I mean, is he? What are they? He was going to take him to the Longshoremen's Hall or something. What was he going to do?
Larry was just enjoying being out and being able to ride in the car and talking to him and everything, and never approached any of that stuff because he didn't know anything about it. He didn't get involved in that kind of stuff. And he said the funniest thing that happened was one day when they were doing it, Joanne opened her purse and she had a gun in there.
Wow.
It was like he was going to the two agents in the front seat, and it was like he was supposed to shoot them or, get loose. And he just shook his hand and put that away. And then he looked on the floor, and one of the driver's gun had slipped out and fallen on the floor. It was right in front of him. So he picked it up and he handed it over to the seat. And he says, "Hey," he says, "you dropped this on the floor." He says, "You better hang on to this." And it flummoxed him so much. And I mean, this is Leary all the way. Now you talk. I am not a theologian, but Leary was a theologian. And his mind, I mean, he was, brilliant in one way, and then his mind, and be able to explain things, and to be able to put his finger on what was wrong with what was going on in the world. This is really what you're talking about, truth and facts, where today it's important, it always is that as the facts get changed and moved to fit the agenda, whatever the agenda is, and distorted, because it's true. We've been bombarded from every direction with falsities and advertising and politics and everything. That it is confusing. And then people who are in a kind of rough way of life and don't see things really being good for themselves, and they hear stuff that, you know, appeals to them, to their way of thinking, well, they go for it.
Right.
You know, and so this is happening like crazy. So the real deal is all of us have to hear and listen to this stuff and say, ha, 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 don't give me that shit, that's bullshit, you know, and then the other stuff is, now you're talking, you got your finger on it there, you know. And this is what education is all about. I mean, one of the things that's happened in the country is the trashing of the public education system. You know, where high schools and grade schools and all that are constantly under bombardment, you know, to dumb the kids up, you know, so they accept stuff that's not true. And so the educators' jobs now, harder than ever, is to show them what is true and what isn't, and to get them to be able to ascertain for themselves what the truth is and go for the truth and not the other.
Well, okay, so you brought this up last time, but I mean specifically, I agree with you. It's now teaching to a standardized test as opposed to how to think, how to discern truth from falsehood, reject the falsehood. What would be your recommendations? I mean, the idea is like, I mean, if you try to teach your civic duty in a history class, you could be viewed as politicizing stuff. I mean, it's very hard. We are dealing with so much different stuff right now. What would be your recommendations as to teach kids how to think? Is it even possible in the public school setting anymore, Babbs? Or is it something that needs to be done within a communal setting? I'm not a huge fan of homeschooling, but there is some homeschools that do a lot of vibrant stuff that educates their kids how to think, how to advocate, and how to operate within a democratic society. That is completely lacking now. And I wonder if public schools are even the place for it anymore.
Well, it's not completely lacking. It's up to the teachers. Teachers have to teach and teach the right stuff, and they got to have the guts to do that. And they're under constant restrictions. And see, the thing that makes it weird is that the teachers themselves are under all these guidelines that are made up by administrators who have never taught. So they don't really know how to do the classroom, and they have all these ideas to make the classroom better and everything. And a lot of times they don't work. And so it's up to the teacher to have to deal with that and still break through and reach the kids. And good teachers can do this, because what you're really teaching kids by the thinking process and the writing and the observations and studying other cultures and the history and all that is how to solve problems. Is when you finally are able to do that, to go through life and through all these problems and, you know, swamps and all that stuff, and work on the real thing, you find that the real thing, as you go through life, is problem solving.
Right.
There's problems that are coming up all the time. I mean, big problems, small problems, I think. But the whole ability to solve these problems is really where it's at. And I'll tell you, I'm very, very, very confident and very, very happy with the young people I meet. And my wife teaches English in a high school, and I go in there and talk to them. And you realize that these kids are sharp. You know, the ones that she's dealing with, and a lot of them are, and they're ready to take on the challenge. I mean, what is the biggest challenge facing us today?
Climate change?
The biggest challenge is restoring the topsoil.
Right.
Our topsoil is being trashed. It's ruined. We lose millions and millions and millions of acres of topsoil every year, washed down the Mississippi through our farming practices. You know, and so these are problems that have to be solved. So one of the big problems, too, right now that we're facing, what are we doing about this radiation that's coming off of that Japanese
Fukushima,
reactor?
yeah, absolutely. Nothing.
Yeah, we're doing nothing.
Nothing.
But yet it's going to impact us all. I mean, it's all that stuff's going in the ocean.
Just for the record, Ken Babbs, every time I call Ken Babbs in the morning, before 10 in the morning, the guy's outside working like feverishly, getting his morning workout. You know, I want to read you something. I want to go back to this. It was called.
That's me you're talking about.
Well, you said I got to get in before it gets too hot. You know, I mean, it's the Dr. Oz, right? You got to keep. It's the 5 principles.
That's in the summertime. Yeah. Now it's just the opposite. I work inside, working on my book and doing all that kind of stuff.
Well, I'm definitely helping with that book. But I want to read you something. It was called The Weather Underground.
That's what I was thinking of with Leary, the Weather Underground.
Let me read you this, okay? And I want you to riff on this for a minute, okay? In September 1970, the group, Weather Underground, accepted a $20,000 payment from the largest international psychedelics distribution organization called the Brotherhood of Eternal Love to break LSD advocate Timothy Leary out of a California prison in San Luis Obispo, north of Santa Barbara, and transport him and his wife to Algeria, where Leary joined Eldridge Cleaver. Rumors also circulated that the funds were donated by an internationally known female folk singer in Los Angeles, or by Elephant's Memory, which was John Lennon's backup band in New York City, and was a factor with the attempted deportation of Lennon, who donated bail money for radical groups. I mean, is this ringing a bell with you? Leary was in...
Well, that's what I was talking to you about Leary, and about that, about being with all that group and getting broken out of jail.
Well, the Black Panthers, I mean, where's the Black Panthers? So why? How did he wind up in jail?
He got busted coming across the border in Mexico with weed, and so that had been hanging over his head forever, and it was a federal bust. And so when he finally got arrested and was in jail, then that's what it was for. He
was in jail, and then this Brotherhood of Eternal Love. Did you know that organization?
Well, I don't know anything about that, about them doing the thing. I just know that they arranged it so that when a movie was going on, Timothy slipped out, and he went up on the roof, and they had run a wire from this pole on the roof all the way down to the ground, and he had to get on that wire, upside down with his legs tangled in the wire in his hands, and put himself down all the way down to the ground there. And then they did spirit him off to Algeria, and then he went into Europe. I think he got busted finally in Switzerland or somewhere like that. But anyway, one of the things about Leary was he could work with anybody. I mean, he could deal with them, and not, he didn't join their cause, whatever it was or anything, but he was an amazing guy in this way. He was able to talk to them and discuss things with them, and rational stuff, and not be a violent, radical, overthrow the government or do this or anything. That guy, I mean, he was a peace-loving guy, and that was the thing about the acid, and that was the way that you identified with others, and you not only did that, but you saw that certain actions were not right, and you didn't follow those actions. You went for, the peace-loving stuff and the stuff that joined people together, not separated them. Keith and I visited him one time in San Diego, and when he was in a federal prison there, and it was a high-rise right downtown, just full of bars and doors and all that, and we were talking to him, and these two guys came walking by, and he jumped up and went over and gave him the old handshake and, talked to him, and they were big, bad-looking bruisers. And he came back and he says, "Those are my handball partners." He says, "We play handball every day." We said, "Oh, yeah. Well, what are they in for?" He says, "Murder."
Oh, man. He could work with any... I thought it was you would say it was a white-collar prison, but apparently not. I mean, that's...
Oh, no. Not at all. These are bad guys.
The idea that, he was... But you do acknowledge that the acid tests, Watts acid tests, Muir Beach, Frisco, Longshoremen's Hall, these were social events, communal events, consciousness expansion. Leary was on the doctoral side, research. I just did 3 interviews with Krishna Das, Wavy Gravy, and Dr. Larry Brilliant. And Ram Dass,
Good for you.
Thank you, brother. I'll send you those. You're going to love those. Ram Dass literally gave 4 pills of acid to Maharaji.
I heard that.
Okay, so you know this. So it would have put somebody on the moon. It didn't affect him. So the idea is that they're doing the clinical side. You're doing the communal side. Did Leary first taste the community acid tests with the pranksters? Because obviously he came out to the West Coast and you guys had a good rapport, because I guarantee you when you were talking to him up in upstate New York, you were saying, "Hey, come out and try it our way for a minute."
No, not at all. We just said that when we meet, we would still be doing the same thing together. And he never came out there and went to an acid test or anything like that.
Okay, because I thought that I was under the impression that George Walker told me that he had a roommate in, that might have been Owsley. But so Leary never came. When was the first time he actually came out to the West Coast to be with you guys? Never?
Well, he was at the that's good. This is the 50th anniversary of
Summer
of Love,
yep.
the BN, and he was there at that. But we weren't there. I don't know when we'd run into him at different places. Oh, and he would come to Eugene to speak. He'd go around speaking, and every time he came there, we'd get together with him. And then later on, we saw him more and more. Well, he was living in L.A. as why. And we'd see him and be together with him and got to know him. We got to know him really well as just a regular guy, doing regular stuff.
Did he and you? But you were inspired. Can you talk about how he wrapped the theology into the idea of communal experience in modern, like being on the actual physical earth, and why that inspired you so much? Because I consider you a theologian, but you don't consider yourself a theologian. So can you give an example of what inspired you about that?
About what?
You said he was a theologian, but he was an.
Well, that's because he discussed philosophy and religion and what it was all about, and that was part of his thing. And he had a real uplifting view of all that.
What did he say about it?
Like we're all one, and there's a big, beautiful, omniscient something that is up there somewhere that we can tap the source of, and it's it's all about love, and we can expand that and extend it to others, and become part of this great universal bond. Not trying to destroy it, but make it stronger. Stuff like that.
We got another voice to play for you, Mr. Babbs. Settle in, and then we'll break it down, brother.
Okay, go for it.
Yeah.
Easy, and I had this thing called Tools for My Chest, and one of the tools was listening to the music of Fred Neil, and another thing was honoring your father and mother. And I remember reading that and calling my parents up immediately, and they were stunned, and I had this beautiful breakthrough, and I called Ken to thank him. He said, well, come on, it's just so darn simple. But the greatest thing he gave me is to always put my good where it'll do the most. And that's a phrase that I pass on to the children of Camp Winter Rainbow and anybody else that I can tag it on to. Always try and put your good where it'll do the most. And if we do that, we can push the light beyond the Trumps of the world into the hearts.
All right, who is that, Babbs?
That's my old pal, Hugh Romney.
Hugh Romney. Did you know him as Hugh Romney, the guy who started jazz and poetry at Boston University, my alma mater?
I didn't know him back there in the East, but when I first met him, he was Hugh Romney.
You want to tell you something? He told me, I couldn't find the audio bite. It is hysterical. He said, before we get into that quote, he said to me last week, because they just honored Ram Dass in Maui.
Right.
So I was doing all these interviews to promote it, and it's taken on a life of its own. But he said that you guys, you and Kesey came down and were like, dragged him back. You dragged him somewhere to see this film of the bus trip. Yeah. And he said it was basically him looking at Mike Hagan's shoes the whole time, and that he needed paper clips to keep his eyelids open. He was obviously busting chops, but I mean this is why I love to do my show, Ken, because not only do you guys need to be not only does it need to be factually accurate, you guys need to be promoted for what you were about as human beings. And So did you hear about? I'm sure you've heard about the tools from my chest. Can you riff on that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I remember that. Kesey, that was something Kesey wrote. I can't remember what they all are. I can't remember what it was in. It was in one of the things we did. It might have been in Kesey's garage sale, but then again, it might have been in the supplement to the Whole Earth catalog that he did with Paul Krasner. What was the whole thing like that he wrote? That was good. I like to hear that.
Can you talk?
I got to see Wavy just when was it, a few months ago when he came up here for a scene that was put together. It was called the 50th anniversary of the acid test graduation. And the first time I'd seen him in a long time. He and his wife, and it was really good to see him and talk to him.
Yeah, he's still sharp as all get out, but he.
Oh boy, you're not kidding.
He's still sharp and still. He's still, dropping a lot of amazing knowledge. I mean, who was Fred Neil, by the way?
Oh, Fred Neil. God, everybody's forgotten about him. I'm glad he said that. He was this tremendous singer from New Orleans, I think, for a while. He was a guy that really could do it. Yeah, you ought to check and see if he's on YouTube. I'd forgotten all about him.
This is why we talk, Babbs. I mean, why? So was it just? Were there messages that inspired Kesey? I mean, he said from the tools from the chest. I listened. You got to pay respect to your folks. Wavy called his parents, but he did say the music of Fred Neil. That's interesting. Without knowing anything, was it the music or was it the messages?
It was both. It was his lyrics and his voice, and the whole music thing is usually corrupted by insipid love songs. They just seem to go on forever.
With no meaning.
But a lot of times you hear somebody that has something really to say, and they say it in music. I mean, even, what the hell's his name? David Bowie, at the end, that last CD he did is really amazing. When you think of him as being just a pop guy. But anyway, the point is that Kesey said, when he said tools from his chest, he was writing down things that he had used and picked up, to pass on to others as good stuff. And so that was part of the good stuff. I'm going to have to look that up and read the rest of that if I can find it.
Yeah, and I also wanted to talk to you about your relationship with Jed Kesey, and ultimately, I've talked to Zane about it, and I've talked to several people, Walker, but that had a huge effect on Ken, and I just wanted you to talk about the kind of character that Jed was, and really how because I from what I can gather is that it was something that Kesey lost part of himself. Ken did after that.
Well, that's true. I mean, anybody that's lost a son or a daughter has had that same thing happen to them. I mean, Kesey, being the guy he is and was able to articulate it and put it out there for the world to hear. How dreadful it was and what a tough thing it was. And he says, you talk about a psychedelic experience when you lose a child. That's about as ultimate as it gets.
It's a bad trip, I think.
Well, that's the thing about psychedelic. You don't only just see the wonderful stuff; you see the bad stuff too. I mean, and then to have that happen in your life. I mean, right now we're going through a tremendous psychedelic scene with what's happening in this country and in the world. I mean, the whole world is psychedelicized now. Who needs drugs? Nobody could make this stuff up or see it, and it's happening all around us. So the same way, you got to be able to dig the bad as well as the good, and know that this is part of the scene. This is the scene.
I dig. No, I mean, do you think that the world is more psychedelicized than it's ever been?
Oh, absolutely, and I think the fact that LSD came onto the world affected it. It's like I think as Kesey said, you ever see that cartoon of Crumbs where meatballs falling from the sky and hitting everybody out in the street? Those guys with big shoes walking along and falling on everything. He said when meatball hit, it hit everything. It didn't hit the people, just the people. It hit the trees, the bushes, the animals, the earth, the rocks, everything.
So I mean, but we've I mean, this is so much. Did you, Babbs? Did you? I know you didn't do it, but I mean, did you see the effects of Peeps taking LSD in Vietnam? I mean, you were a pilot, okay, but I mean, but I know you didn't do it, but it was there, right? I mean, did you see?
Not when I was there.
I
mean, I was there in 1962 and 63. I mean, it was just beginning. It was just getting started. And not only that, in the world itself, I had taken LSD and smoked pot and all that, from being around with Kesey and at Stanford and that, but when I went to Vietnam, there were no drugs, and I was not interested in any drugs. Like you say, Vietnam was a psychedelic experience.
I don't know. I don't know.
You didn't need drugs.
I mean, I just want to go on the record. I've spent a lot of time. I mean, Walker is as articulate as you are, and
not only that, but he's got a good memory. He can remember everything.
Well, listen, man. We're cooking along, but did you actually? I mean, Roland Kirk would go back with you cats after gigs and drop acid.
Well, Kesey went and saw him in San Francisco at a jazz place, and he got to talking to him. And then Roland Kirk came to Kesey's house in La Honda, and they took acid together and did music together. Kesey played the flute, and so he played the flute, and along with Rashawn Roland Kirk. And so they became really good friends. And then when Kesey and I were doing the hoo-ha, the poetic hoo-ha for 2 years at the University of Oregon, the second year, Roland Kirk was the featured artist.
Oh my! Wait! What was it called? The hoo-ha? What was it called?
Yeah, the poetic hoo-ha.
The poetic hoo-ha.
Oh yeah!
Unbelievable! And then
really 2 years, two tremendous scenes. What was I going to say? Oh, the first year, I think it was. Yeah, it was the first year. The featured speaker was what the hell is his name? Naked Lunch.
Wow.
What's his name? William Burroughs.
William Burroughs.
Yeah. So it's fun to spend some time with him too. First time, only time we've ever met him.
So could you talk about how Kirk fit in? I mean, that dude. I've interviewed Todd Barkin, who ran the Keystone Corner for 10 years, and he remembers vividly meeting Rahsaan on a bus in Columbus, going to see a Columbus Clippers Yankee minor league baseball game, and the guy had chains and necklaces and all these adapted horns. I mean, how did he fit into the hoo-ha? I mean, was he just playing music? Was he actually getting up there and talking?
Oh no, he had a band. Oh God, yeah, he was a well-known jazz guy. I mean, before he started, he was just a plain old saxophone player, but then he started adding all this other stuff, and like whistles and bells and all this stuff he hung on him, and then horns that he would tape together, and so he could play two saxophones at the same time, making two different. He played this one thing, you can hear it now on YouTube, where he's playing a classical number on the one horn and a pop number on the other horn at the same time.
That's insane.
I know. And then he said there at this hoo-ha, he says, I'm going to do something, he says, you've never heard or seen before. He says, I'm going to play the longest single note ever played. And he was going, and all of a sudden he hit this note, and he played it for 1 minute and 20 seconds. The same note, held it. And others have done it, but this thing called circular breathing.
Absolutely.
Where you're able to blow out and breathe in at the same thing, kind of like a bagpipe or something like that.
I'm looking at William Burroughs at Kesey's farm. This is approximately the hoo-ha started in June '76.
Yeah, that was that one, and then there was another either the year before or the year after. I can't remember.
Babbs, you claim not to be I know you're not a professional musician, but I really would love you to talk about some of the bone players, Irby Green or J.J. Johnson or any of the, who did you get off? Why did you pick up the bone to begin with, man? I mean, I played the bone. I never really, it never really stuck with me. But I mean, I'm just so honored that you played like. Who inspired you to pick up the bone?
Well, I don't know. My mother tried to have me take piano lessons when I was a kid, because she could play the piano, but I never really took the piano. But for some reason, when I was in the 6th grade and got into went to get in the band, the trombone is what I picked up and played. And I was lucky because our junior high school, 7th grade, was in the same building as the high school, 7 through 12. And when you were in the 7th grade, you could play in the high school band. So I played in the band for 6 years and got really good on the trombone, first chair and all that, and we had a Class A band, state champions and all that. But not only that, we had a swing band, we had a Dixieland band, we had a polka band, and there's one other, I can't remember what the other was. And so I played in all those bands, and the swing band was the best, because we would play for dances and stuff like that, and had these, just like a regular old 50s swing band with those things in front, those round things that held your music. And stand up and play your solo and all that.
Sure.
But I made a bad mistake when I graduated from high school, as I thought that was all high school, and I didn't play in college. And it wasn't until later that I started playing again, and just fun of it. Are we still on?
Yeah, I think you might be getting a phone call that
okay,
call.
We'll ignore that.
So
okay,
what you're getting at.
Anyway,
go ahead.
I found that if I could whistle a tune, and I could whistle a lot of different tunes, because when you're young, you pick up a lot of songs, and playing in a band like that, a lot of songs you really know. In fact, you still do. I could play it on my trombone without reading it off a sheet. And so then I got into doing just strictly playing without music, and if it was a song or something like that, I just worked on it until I kind of had it down. And then it got into using it as, the trombone is actually kind of a clown instrument. A oompa oompa band, marching stuff, and used for special effects, to embellish a story and stuff like that. And so then we'd form little groups with musicians I knew around here and actually perform all over the place around here.
The trombone became a little bit more than that with Fred Wesley, with James Brown, and obviously.
Well, yes, it has now. Yeah. But I'm talking about me. Kay Winding and J.J. Johnson were my guys.
That's what I wanted to. I wanted to hear about Kay Winding, but also the swing tunes. I mean, were you playing like Kenton or Woody Herman or Benny Goodman too? I mean, those guys all came from different. And then you had Basie. Basie was totally different. I mean, were you playing?
Yeah, we do all that stuff. Our band director was really hip, and he'd give us sheets from all the songs. But a lot of them were just pop songs of the day, I don't know, like Patti Page songs, or, I can't remember now. Or just songs that are classics now, like Bob Dylan is doing.
I dig. Yeah, well, before I let you go, Ken, I just wanted you to talk about how proud you are of your children, and if they are, as we carry on the lineage of music we were just talking about with Kai Winding and J.J. Johnson, the lineage of the Babbs family. Last time you shared a story of inspiration about literally almost getting hit with a lightning bolt on the top of when you went on that hike, and I just wanted you to talk about from the perspective of being a father and a grandfather, something inspiring from your family that you can share with the audience.
Well, there for a while we had a group called the Babbs Boys Band, because three of my boys, Simon, Obie, and Eli, all played. Simon still does play in a band called Woodknot. He plays all the time, lives in Portland. He's guitar, and Obie on the drums, and Eli on the bass. Eli's really a good bass player, and he goes in and out all the time of playing. One of the real problems with music is you can get a thing we've called the rock and roll flu, which is not a good thing, because when you get a bad case of the rock and roll flu, you think that this is it.
Right.
That you're going to be a musician, you're going to make money and everything. But the fact of the matter is, very few of the millions and millions and millions of musicians make a living at it. But so you have to have a daytime job to support your nighttime music habit. And if you can learn to do that and be happy in both, then you can really groove. And so so these guys get a case of rock and roll flu. You just hope it's not a terminal case.
Right. Keep your day job
straight.
Yeah, keep your day job till your night job pays.
Yeah. And so one of the best gigs I had recently was on Eli's, I think it was 45th birthday up in Portland. He set up a gig at this bar, this kind of a neighborhood bar in the east side of Portland, and so it was just Simon on the guitar and Eli on his bass, and this guy Craig Kirtland plays drums for him on the drums, and me. And I didn't bring my trombone, I just had harmonica. And we played there for like 4 hours, and the crowd was always constantly around 10 people, but it was always changing. Like, suddenly there'd be nobody there, and then there'd be another 10 people all through the night.
This is
and
great.
They just didn't know what was going on. One of the best times we had all ever.
Babbs, I love you, man. We got more to do, but we'll let this breathe for a minute. I hope you had a good time. And
okay, let me end with one last
Go ahead.
bone thing. It's like the guy who said, I hated every bone in her body except mine.
That's what you told me in our first interview. I loved every.
Really?
I hated every bone. I hated every bone in her body except mine. Amen,
Yeah.
Babbs. Talk to you soon,
Okay.
man. Later on.
Okay, take it easy, Jake.
Take it easy, man. Bye-bye.
Okay, goodbye, world.
Goodbye, Babbs. Peace. Ken Babbs, another third interview, another one, cosmic. We'll be back with a titan of the studio music scene and an incredible bass player, Abraham Laboriel, right after this.